You have just witnessed a wonderful phenomenon in work right now. A second ago, when you guys clapped for me, something amazing happened. When an audience like this starts clapping, different people usually starts clapping at different times. But after just a few seconds, the entire audience will begin to clap at the same time with the same rhythm. The entire audience will synchronize after just a few seconds. Can you guys once again clap so that we can observe this phenomenon? Why did that happen? There wasn't any instruction given to you about when to clap. No one orchestrated this. Yet, after just a few seconds, the entire audience started clapping with the same rhythm. It's because we humans love to synchronize. Synchronization, or making things happen in an orderly manner. We love to do this because we are a social species. We require each other to grow. We all contribute to the larger human society in some way so that the society will flourish as a whole. And for that reason, we are always on the lookout for social clues and cues about how to behave so that we can navigate through the crowd around us. Let me tell you about an incident that happened in London in the year 2000. So on June 10, a new bridge was to be inaugurated for pedestrians to walk across the River Thames. The Millennium Bridge, which cost almost 19 million pounds to make, was to be inaugurated. Now, as you can see in this picture, the bridge has a really peculiar type of architecture. Now, thousands of people came to watch the inauguration ceremony. And after the ceremony was over, all of these people started walking across the bridge when suddenly the bridge began to sway dangerously left to right. The people began to panic, and that caused the bridge to sway even more. Eventually, police came and escorted all the people out of the bridge safely. No one was hurt, luckily. But after just 2 days, the 19 million pound bridge was closed. Why did that happen? When a lot of human beings walk across a bridge, we exert a really huge force on the bridge. But usually, this force doesn't cause much of a concern because these forces are not synchronized. I mean, when one person puts his foot down, someone else on the bridge takes his foot off the ground. So these forces are not in sync with each other, so no harm happens to the bridge. But if a lot of humans walk with synchronization to each other, these forces would add up, causing the bridge to collapse. There are lots of incidents in history where soldiers marching across a bridge has caused it to collapse. Due to this, there is a rule in army that says you must not march over a bridge. You must break formation when you are walking over a bridge. But coming back to the Millennium Bridge, no one was marching here. It was just a group of people walking randomly. Or were they? When people walked up atop the Millennium Bridge, the bridge actually had a tiny sideways wobble. Just a tiny sideways wobble. But when presented with this wobble, people atop the bridge unconsciously synchronized their walking pace to be in match with the wobble of the bridge. You can see that in this clip right here. The people unconsciously synchronized their walking paces with each other to be in more sync with the bridge's wobble. Due to this synchronized walking, the bridge began to sway left to right dangerously in a matter of seconds. Now, in these two examples of people clapping and of the Millennium Bridge, people got synchronized without any conscious effort. Such unconscious and unintentional synchronization happens all the time around us. But sometimes we make conscious efforts to get synchronized with the crowd around us. Imagine you walk into an elevator. Usually people stand facing the door of the elevator, inside an elevator, right? But imagine you walk into an elevator and all the people inside the elevator are facing the right side of the lift like this. What will you do? You will also go and stand facing the right side of the lift like them. Why did you do that? Because they must be doing that for a reason, right? The energy and time that would require you to also stand facing your right is relatively low compared to some kind of danger that might happen to you if you stand the normal way. The thing is, you don't break the norm. You just do what everyone else is doing in this point. Imagine one of your friends told you a joke, but you didn't understand the joke. What will you do? If everyone else is laughing like crazy, you will also laugh. Why? Because you obviously don't want other people to think that you're stupid enough to not understand a joke. This is also the reason why in TV serials or sitcoms, when something funny happens, there's a laugh track being played in the background. That laugh track motivates us to laugh, to go in sync with the audience. The idea of a laugh track came from something known as claques. Claques were a group of people that existed in the 19th, 18th centuries. During this time period, French operas often hired professional applauders. Now, what would these professional applauders do? These professional applauders would study the script of the operas and then attend the operas like normal opera goers and clap, laugh, cry, or cheer at appropriate times. By doing so, the actual audience who's watching the drama will get an idea about how to react to each scene. These claques were considered to be the forerunners of the idea of a laugh track. Now imagine this. Imagine that you're watching a sports event. It's going to be a lot more fun if there are a lot more people cheering for your favorite team. What does all of these examples tell us? These examples tell us that we all have a desire to fit in, a desire to go with the crowd. In psychology, there's a technical term for this sort of phenomenon: conformity. Conformity is where one aligns his actions, attitudes, beliefs to be in more sync with the people around us. There's a famous psychological experiment that demonstrates conformity, and it's known as the Ash experiment. In the Ash experiment, a group of people were asked this question: which line is the same length as the line on the left? So basically, you have to match the length of this line with one of these three lines. So in the experiment, this question was asked to a group of 7 people. Now the answer to this question is obvious, right? Line A is the same length as the line on the left. But in the experiment, this question was asked to a group of 7 people who were 6 out of these 7 people were actors. And the remaining 1 person was a person who didn't know anything about the experiment. Now here's what happened. A researcher came into the room and asked the volunteers of the experiment to match the length of this line with one of these 3 lines. One by one, these 6 actors confidently gave the wrong answer, option C. And the 7th person, who is not an actor, also said option C. The last person gave in to peer pressure and confirmed with the rest of the group. Now in this experiment, when initially this experiment was done, 74% of the people who did this experiment confirmed and said the wrong answer at some point just because everyone else was saying the wrong answer. In this experiment, conformity is pretty much harmless. I mean, if one person says one line is longer than the other line, no one is going to get hurt or anything. But sometimes conformity can actually create really dangerous situations. Imagine that all the army generals and ministers of a country are sitting in a room. Now imagine that these people are deciding whether or not to go in war with a neighboring country. Now imagine that they are asking each person's individual opinion about whether or not they should go to war. At such a situation, the pressure is high. Thousands of soldiers' lives are at stake. And if something happens, you don't want to be blamed for it. In such a situation, a person might not tell his actual opinion. Instead, he'll be compelled to just go with the crowd, just do what everyone else is saying. Such a situation is known as groupthink, a situation where people just agree along with the crowd instead of thinking critically about the matter. Now, groupthink is a phenomenon that has resulted in a lot of tragedies and disasters worldwide. One prime case happened in 1941 during the middle of World War II. The United States had intercepted some Japanese messages, and they found out that Japan was preparing itself for an attack against the US somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. So the officers working in Washington gave a warning to officers working in Hawaii that an attack might happen. But the naval officers working in Hawaii ignored these warnings. The primary reason was groupthink. People convinced themselves that the Japanese will never attack the US. Their reasonings included things like that Japan would never dare to do such an attempt because they would realize that it would precipitate in an all-out war, and the US can surely win the resulting war. As you can see in these examples, they were not trying to address the problem. They were trying to find ways to avoid the problem. And the reason they did that was because the general consensus at that time was that the Japan would never attack the United States. So due to that, they all dodged the problem. They didn't take much action, and this lack of action eventually resulted in Japan launching a surprise airstrike assault on Pearl Harbor, killing around 2,500 American soldiers. This isn't just a single incident. Many more incidents have happened like this. The Challenger disaster, Chernobyl disaster, Vietnam War, Bay of Pigs invasion were some disasters that were significantly contributed by groupthink. Imagine a person gravely injured lying on a roadside. If only one other person was there, he or she would probably take some quick action. But if a lot more people were there, everyone in that area is going to think that someone else will take the action. Someone else will call the police, or someone else will call the ambulance. This terrifying effect is known as the bystander effect. When the number of people watching a house go up in flames increases, the probability of someone actually calling the fire force decreases. The point I'm trying to say is, we all think that we are insignificant when we are in a much larger group. But that isn't true. Think about it. If you go into a room full of people and start laughing uncontrollably, pretty soon the entire room is going to laugh with you. Just one person is enough to do that. Remember an incident where some guy was trying to tell you a joke. Sometimes it's not the joke that makes you laugh. It's the laughter of the person who told the joke that makes you laugh. I mean, even if it's a terrible joke, if the person who told the joke was laughing like crazy at their own joke, you will also laugh. Laughter is contagious. One person is enough to make an entire audience laugh. In a huge meeting, we all think that one person's opinion will not matter that much. But while thinking like that, you're failing to take into account that there will be some people who will just support one person just because they want to go with the crowd. Each person's opinion can act like a catalyst, motivating more and more people to jump into the bandwagon. Each person jumping into this bandwagon causes more and more people to jump into it too. So like a chain reaction, everyone is jumping into the bandwagon without any actual thinking being done. It's kind of ironic to think that when a lot of smart people come together, often their decisions become less smart as a whole. Thank you.